and welcome back to my channel. For this week's video, I've decided to do nature prints on my 12x14 gel plate. I have leaves and then part of some evergreen trees from my backyard, and then I also got some of this ornamental grass from my backyard, and I'll be using all these pieces in today's video. Let's jump right in. So a lot of the prints that I'm making in this video, I am creating like a base layer and then adding some type of the leaves or prints on top of that. But before I get started, I kind of need to clean up this gel plate from the last session I had. If you notice, there was a lot of paint left over on the gel plate, and so I'm just putting some blue down, and then I'm going to peel this up. And what it's doing is it's pulling a lot of the dried paint that was sitting on the plate for several days. And then once I pulled this, I couldn't add anything else to it because I loved all the different colors and textures here. So I'll use that in collage as it is. Now that the plate is quote-unquote clean, I'm going to get started with my nature prints. So I'm mixing the quinacridone Magenta and quinacridone Azo Gold. And then I'm going to start placing leaves, and I'm just kind of playing around with things here to figure out how I am going to use these on my gel plate, because I've actually never done it before, and I'm experimenting here. So I thought maybe I wanted to roll the brayer on there to get some of the leaf texture, but then I decided I will just wait and I'll place the paper on top and just really press the paper with my hands to get all the little lines on the leaves. And right there is when I realized I should put like a base color down first. That way there isn't just these big white spaces where the leaves were. So you'll notice over this entire video, I start to pick up some little tips and tricks, and I change some things as I'm going and how I'm going to layer these colors up. So right there, in order for that to work, the little like red that was left over on the leaves, that had to be dry, and then I could put that next layer to pull all these textures up. So you'll also notice several times in the video I put a little note on there when there are times when I'm needing to let that layer dry before I can pull my next print. Now we've got some color rather than white spaces inside those leaves, which I like a lot better. I'm using the golden fluid acrylics in this entire video, and I love those because they move around really easily with the brayer. They also dry really quickly. Alright, so I've got a good background layer there. That way I don't have just a white piece of paper for my next pull. I can use that yellow color as the background. So here I'm just going to arrange these little pieces that I snipped off of some evergreen trees in my backyard. And I haven't mentioned, but this paper that I'm using is just a drawing paper. So it's not too thick. It's not like thick like a watercolor paper, but it's not thin like tissue paper either. And I actually really like the lines that showed up there. They kind of remind me of like some type of like map. And there were all these little pieces of the evergreen like left on the gel plate, so I spent a lot of time picking those off, but I sped it up and skipped ahead for you guys. You'll notice I like to mix different colors. I don't always use just one straight color, and sometimes it's fun to mix, and I kind of swirl them up and then I roll the brayer back and forth. And then I always use that little scrap piece to get some of the paint off of the edges. Just kind of keeps my hand a little bit cleaner. So you can see the little green bits there was the leftover from the Evergreen. I like how those pieces layered up. Payne's Gray is one of my favorite colors. You'll see me grab that color a lot. And since I really enjoyed the shapes from that last pull, I'm basically going to try to recreate that. And I'm trying to place these, I didn't remember exactly where I had them, but I'm trying to place them in a very similar position so that I get a really similar pull again, but then with blue, because I wanted those two pulls to layer up and continue that look of like some type of really cool like lines on a map. And there it is. I love how like there were even more little pieces of the blue that showed up. Just trying to make use of the paint that is left on the pieces of the tree, but it would probably already started to dry, so it wasn't working. So I'm picking off the little pieces of the evergreen again and then letting this dry. And now I can go in with these yellow and gold colors and pull up all of these details. And I picked yellow so that there would be a lot of contrast there from the blue, and then all those little details would show up. And I absolutely love how that turned out. You'll notice I mixed that quinacridone Azo Gold with a lot of different colors. It just for some reason works so well with so many of these other golden fluid colors that I have. So I did pick up a couple twigs, but these were actually from like a walk that I had been on recently. And I decided I would try to create some texture lines with this, and I just rolled it around to create a repeat pattern. Speed it up for you. And then I decided to use a different one on the left side and just kind of press it in gently to the gel plate. You do want to be careful when you're doing this so that you're not like scratching the plate and like ruining it. So I thought these textures might come through kind of cool, so I'm kind of only pressing where those little leaf spots are. And then it kind of like washed everything together, which was not my intent, but I'm going to continue on. So since I didn't really love that, like the way that print turned out, I decided that I'm going to try to put the leaves back on, very similar leaf shapes in the same spot. And notice I am always flipping them and making sure that the part with the most texture is facing down so that all those little lines are hitting the gel plate direction, and those little leaf lines are on the gel plate left over with that blue. Then I'm pulling the actual leaf and trying to press it into that last pull that I didn't love so much, so that some of the actual leaf, like the real leaf, is printing on the paper and now adding some more interest. That way I like that paper a little more. Now I'm going to let these leaves dry. Then I put a little piece of deli paper to the right with some paint, and I decided I would use the stick as kind of like a paintbrush instead. And I would just kind of let these little organic lines and dots add to my next pull. And again, You have to let that dry. What I had done is I had another project going in my studio at the same time, so I would stop and I would work on that other project and let the plate completely dry, and then I would come back. And right there I used my little dryer, like a real quick zap of air to help dry. So that has a mixture of the leaves and the brown twig lines. So I hadn't mixed that color with teal before, and I actually really like how it turned out. Then I decided to just kind of stamp leaves all over rather than leaving the leaves on the gel plate. And then I'm going to press it in to this piece I already had. And I love it because then it has like all these little bits and pieces of the leaf texture. And I just try to fill in some of the areas that are still kind of white. I'm just trying to add a little more texture into those places that need it. I really love how that turned out. And I love how it's like kind of like a monochromatic piece, but still lots of detail. So with this next section, I am layering several different colors and several different of the like outdoor items. So I'm using gold in several different colors, and I'm using the evergreen piece, and that had already kind of dried and didn't really work, so then I was like, well, I'll just keep layering this up. And that's when I start to think, probably not going to use the evergreen much longer because it keeps shedding little pieces all over the gel plate. So just a warning. So now I'm going to do more leaf stamping. And these layers are really, really thin. I'm not putting a lot of paint, so they're drying really quickly in between. And I'm using like lots of different things, layering them all up. So on this next pull, you're going to see little bits and pieces of all these different textures that I'm adding and layering up. So we let that dry completely, and then I'm coming in with quinacridone magenta. Not too much paint, not too little. You can kind of see through, it's like a thin-ish layer. And when that pulls up, you're going to see a lot of the yellows and golds like flickering on top of the magenta. And it's really fun. It's kind of like all these little hidden textures depending on how the light hits it, and I love it. So sometimes if you don't clean your brayer or you don't switch your brayer, the previous color kind of mixes in with what you're doing, and that's what happened there. But I don't mind it because I like how all the little swirls and lines came out on that pull. So after I used that grass, I was really obsessed with how those lines came out, and I wanted to do like just the grass lines and experiment with just this texture on its own and see what happened. So I'm just pressing the grass down and using the brayer. I'm not trying to make it perfect, I'm just letting it do its own thing, and I'm just brayering across the top. And you have to let that dry. I hated the fact that I had all this paint left on the grass, so I picked this this other piece of like packing paper that I had printed on previously, and I started cleaning it off, and it created these cool little lines. So there's that piece from before, and I'm laying it over the dry blue, and look at that. I love it. And that's when I'm like, okay, we're going to do this again. I love how you can see some of the little like swirls behind it, and obviously you can see the grass lines. So I'm going in again with a lighter mix of colors. And what's really funny here is I pull this and I just love this as is, because what a great little mixture of textures just on that one pull. And I was like, okay, well, I really want to keep that. I didn't want to add the grass on top of it, so I can use that piece for collage. So I start again with the yellow colors, and this time it stays a little bit cleaner because my brayer was clean. And it's kind of a more flat pull, just like a flat yellow. And then mixing Payne's Gray and I believe teal, just for fun, for the top layer of another pull with the grass. I like how this kind of makes like a cloudy blue. I wasn't expecting that. I really enjoy that. And again, I'm going to brayer these grass lines over and over and over. And I wanted to make sure that there were several spots that really pulled a lot of paint away, like kind of over on the top right where there's huge pieces, and now in the center where a lot of paint gets removed, because I want that yellow to really show through. So I want to clean off that grass onto this real funky piece of packing paper I have going. Because usually my goal is to not waste the paint. And I like how that's looking. Pretty cool. And we're going to let that dry. Awesome. That's why I also have that little sketchbook next to me, so that I can brayer my extra paint over, and that journal just like grows and grows and grows full of these paint pages. So I had cut the bottoms of some of those pages off and had these little strips left. So I thought, why not do another cool texture design across these white pages so that I wasn't wasting the paper. So I'm all done, and I just wanted to show you guys some of the pieces, what they look like now with some of the cool layers of paint on them. And then I'm just showing you some of my favorite colors here. There's a lot of the fluid acrylics that I always seem to be grabbing when I'm working on my gel plate. And this is what my area looks like. So for this part, I thought I would show you guys all the different pieces that I created today. And I'm going to show you kind of a far away shot and then a detailed shot on most of these. Do me a favor and let me know which one of these is your favorite. I'd love to chat with you guys in the comments. So any feedback or questions, or if you're just going to comment and let me know which one of these is your favorite, I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you use any of these techniques, I would love to hear about that as well. So when I originally started this session of creating all these nature prints, I thought most of them would probably be used like in collage, meaning I would either rip them up or cut them up and use them in future pieces of artwork. But I shared a couple of them on my Instagram. I'm over on Instagram at Jennifer Tobin Art if you want to follow me there. But I shared some of them in my stories, and I had people interested in a couple of these pieces, like as a piece of artwork for their wall. So I'm curious what you think. What you think, like, this technique is good for. Do you think some of these lend themselves to be like finished pieces of artwork that you would put on your wall? Or do you think that you would use most of these just to kind of like rip up and use for collage? I think I'm personally kind of thinking like a little mixture of both. Like some of them I like as is, but then some of them I definitely like just as a textural element, like in a future piece, especially this one right here. But then at the same time, like if you had like a collection of like 3 or 6 or 9 or however many of these like together on a wall, I think they could be really pretty, especially during the fall season. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. So I'm almost done, and I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of those fun things that people on YouTube ask you to do. But I really appreciate you guys being here and chatting with me and just coming along for the ride and being a part of my art practice. I will have links below in the description if you are interested in heading over to my website or Instagram, or if you're interested in looking at my online course that is all about using your gel plate and creating layered landscapes. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks again for being here. Bye.